Hello and welcome to Paper Plays Julie K.
Thanks so much for stopping by, and today I have a gorgeous design team project to share with you guys for Kraft Supplies for You. And again, Kraft Supplies for You is an online store that carries laces and trims, flowers, doilies, bling, different embellishments. There's beads, there's charms, just to name some of the items. There is a .net store and a Zibbit store, and you guys can definitely shop at both. And I will have both of those linked below, along with the other social media sites for Kraft Supplies for You. We have a Facebook group, we're on Pinterest, we have a blog, and we're also on Instagram. So I will link all of those below, and also the other ladies who are on our design team, so you can easily find them. They have been creating some wonderful projects this month, so I do hope you go and check them out. And for this month, I decided to attempt to do my first little lace book. I do have to admit, I cheated a little bit. I didn't do a whole heck of a lot of sewing in this book. I did start off with, last year, I did find a couple of these little, they're called mixed media cloth books. I did find a couple of these and I bought them, and I thought this would be a great way to start to make my first lace book. Just because the pages were already done for me, and so they aren't sewed in. They're in with a little ring. And then there's eyelets, which if you wanted to do this yourself, it would be pretty easy to do on a sewing machine. This one just has two pieces of material sewed together, and then they have eyelets right there. And so these pages do come out. The book originally had 8 pages. I ended up only doing 6 in my final book just because it got pretty chunky. I do love how it turned out, and I kind of stuck with the theme of colors. It was black, white, and cream, and that's just to go with the photos that I use inside of here. And I did use photos of an old-time actress. Her name is Lily Elsie, I believe. And so I printed off a whole bunch of her photos from Pinterest and used them inside the book. So I did start off with the cloth cover that you guys saw. I glued down some lace underneath, and I'm just showing you on the back side of this because it's easier to see. So I glued down just some basic lace, and then I glued on top of that this gorgeous, or I think it's exquisite, and elegant looking, this little lace panel from Kraft Supplies for You. And it is a long panel. It starts up here, and then you have all this trim or the dangles underneath it. And so that was my next step. After I went ahead and did that, I did make sure I punched out all the holes so I could get my rings back in, just to make sure that that would go through again. And then I finished it off with, at the top and the bottom, you can see this little crochet trim that my friend Sherry gave me, and she got it from someone who was learning how to crochet. And so I just have been saving it for a special project, so I went ahead and used it on here. So I have that up atop. Then you can also see it underneath this little lace panel here. I have some of it down here. After that, I went ahead and glued down this little trim right here, this braided trim. And then each of the corners, I added some of the 3D Loopy Trim from Kraft Supplies for You. Love this trim. It's so fun to use as embellishments. For the cover, I went ahead and I had a butterfly applique in my stash. And it was plain, and I went ahead and I sewed on all of these little pearls on it, just to jazz it up a little bit. And then I used, this is a bling piece from Kraft Supplies for You. And so I used that kind of as the body of my butterfly. And then for the antenna on top, she does have little bead sprays, and this is what this one looks like. And so what I did is I went ahead and used that for the antenna. And so I just used 2 of those up there, and I really like how that turned out on the cover. I think that turned out really cute. And then after I was all done at the very end, I just tied on a lot of miscellaneous eyelash trim and different laces to match the laces on the inside around the rings, just to kind of finish it off. And I might go ahead and add some charms yet. I'm not sure. But so that's my cover. And so when you open it up, I haven't decided if I'm going to do anything on this inside page or not. I might go ahead and add a pocket here, but for now I'm just leaving it plain. I did edge it with some of this little flower trim from my stash. And then again, like I said, each image is a black and white image of this actress, Lily. And so I did go ahead and frame them all. I used tons of Kraft Supply for You product in here, and I will do my best to show you guys everything that's from Kraft Supplies for You. But on this particular page, I used some of this little cotton trim, and it is Kraft Supplies for You. It was a longer or wider trim, and I cut it in half. And so I did use it just to layer on the outside. And then this is really fun trim from Kraft Supplies for You. It is some black little eyelash trim. I did use this also on my first project this month, and I used it to create a flower, and it created a beautiful flower. And I think she also has this in white. At the bottom, I just used some black, just a little snippet that I had in my stash. And underneath that black, I do have this gorgeous little fringe trim from Kraft Supply for You. I love this trim right here. It's one of my favorites. I did also use this way back when on a knitting needle case that I did for Kraft Supply for You also. And it was a really fun trim to use for a dangle or a layering piece. Then on top of that, I added this little trim, and it was just a snippet from my stash right here. It already had the beads and the flowers and the little dangle right there. I edged it out with some Kraft Supply for You. This is Kraft Supply for You trim, this white trim. And then also this little snippet piece up here. And I went ahead and added some little black flat back gem pieces that I had in my stash just to frame her out. So that's my first page. And then what I ended up doing, because I decorated all the front pages, and I was going to decorate the back sides also, but again, this book was getting quite chunky, so what I ended up doing is just creating pockets on the back sides. And so far I haven't stuck anything in the pockets. So on these ones I did use black lace just to use up. I had a whole bunch of little square pieces left over from a past project a long time ago. So I just wanted to use them up. So I did use them on the back sides for all my pocket pages. This one I did edge out with some black trim from my stash. The little loopy trim again, of course, comes from Kraft Supplies for You. And this little sheer lace here is a Kraft Supply for You one. And so I did end up sewing a couple of little pockets out of muslin, and then I put this trim over it. And so I do have a pocket here, and then if I wanted, I could also use this part as a pocket, so it's kind of a double pocket. And so then on to the next page. Again, a lot of Kraft Supply for You trim on here. This background one I believe is a Kraft Supply for You one. This black one right here is also Kraft Supplies for You, and you just are seeing just a small bit of that. If you go back and look at my design team video of all of my package, you'll be able to see this one fully, but it was a very gorgeous one, and I use that along the top and the bottom. This other little black piece right here was just for basic black lace from my stash. I don't know on this one. I think this one was just, this little crochet one was just from my stash. Along with this one too, the next one. This little black braid trim right here is Kraft Supply for You. This black one right here. It's a very nice layering piece. Again, she has, here I used the white 3D loopy trim. Here I used a black one. And I just, underneath that is just a flower and a little applique from my stash. And underneath this one, I think, yeah, this very bottom one is also a Kraft Supply for You trim underneath there. So that's my next one. This one also has a little bit of this little trim here too, this white trim. That's from my stash. Again, the pocket done the exact same way. I just used some ivory braided trim, and then I used some different flowers in the corner, and these ones came off of a trim from Kraft Supplies for You. You can kind of see this other trim a little bit better back here. And so the next page right here, again, another gorgeous image of Lily. The little flower right here is from a trim from Kraft Supplies for You. This is some vintage lace from my stash that I have a little bit left. This is an applique that I think I got from Amy Love. It was a big piece, and I just cut it up. And then I believe the black trim on this one all was just snippets from my stash. This white trim right here is a Kraft Supply for You trim that's coming off of this side. That's a Kraft Supply for You. And then the cotton trim behind that, I think, is just some trim from my stash. But if you were interested, I know Julie in her Kraft Supply for You stores does carry very similar crochet trim. Again, just another pocket. This one, I again layered the pocket up a little bit different. I did use this black braided trim from Kraft Supply for You to edge it out. Again, the pocket, this part right here is Kraft Supply for You, and the black 3D loopy trim is Kraft Supply for You. And the little white flowers are from my stash that I did in each corner. I just like to finish off my corners. And so now on this next page, I really love how this one turned out also. I like how all of them turned out. This one, I started off with just some trim at the very bottom. That came from my friend Sherry. I used some white crochet thread, or white crochet trim from my stash. This black, again, is just a snippet from my stash. This trim right here came from my friend Shonda a while ago. And then I edged this one out with the Kraft Supply for You, this little rose trim. This is in white, and she also carries that one in pink. And then at the bottom, I just used some dangles from my stash, and then I added the little black gem pieces. And then underneath there, you can see there's some more Kraft Supply for You trim underneath there. This white layer right here is Kraft Supply for You. And this one was just a snippet from my stash. Oh, and then this crochet trim right here is Kraft Supply for You also on this side right here that sticks out. Another fun one. Another pocket. And this one I edged out in some white braided trim. And it looks like one of my flowers fell off, one of my little beads fell off, so I'll have to glue that one back in. But I just glued in some beads, flat back pearl things for my stash. Again, the pocket is Kraft Supply for You. My next image, another gorgeous image of the actress. And let's see, on this one, my bottom layer, this one is just from my stash. This one up here is a Kraft Supply for You trim. It's beautiful trim. And then I use that on the sides, on the 3 of the sides right there. I think I chose not to use it here just because I was making sure I could leave open the holes for my rings. The little cotton one right here again is that longer or wider piece from Kraft Supply for You that I cut up and used right there. This eyelash lace is again from Kraft Supplies for You. I just think that's such an elegant look, and I think this would be a fun one to use also, like if you were doing a gypsy book. That's just a fun lace, and like I said, it made a gorgeous flower. And then I trimmed it off. This is some older trim that I had in my stash, and the little dangles right here is Kraft Supply for You. That was my last little remnant piece that I used there. In the corners, I used the 3D loopy trim that was black. And then if you guys watched my design team video, my first one for this month, I created a brooch wall hanging with some material. And so I had some scraps left, and usually I like make little flowers and things out of the scraps. And so this was a flower I made out of those scraps. And then I just added a little black gem piece in the middle right there. So another pocket, again, that's Kraft Supply for You. The little trim around the edges is from my stash. The flowers are from my stash, and the flat back pearls are from my stash. But now on this side, you could see that gorgeous trim from Kraft Supplies for You. It's one of the Venice trims. And I think that's why I chose to use it on the base here, is because I knew it was going to show through over here. And I just love how that looks. And this is my last page. And so this one, I started off just with some trim from my stash on the top and the side, and then a little bit more of that same trim right here I used down here. I just used up my last little piece down there. The black trim is from my stash, and I actually cut that off of a dress a while back. And then I used up the rest of my of this little gathered trim right here that has the pearls in it from Kraft Supplies for You. I did use that on the altered jar that I did earlier this month, and I love that. And again, that was my last little bit. She does carry that in other colors, cream and pink, and then black, I believe. And then I also used this little flower that I put in her hair, came from one of the trims from Kraft Supply for You. So there was a ton of Kraft Supply for You product in this little lace book. And then again, I just did another pocket back here, and you can see that little bit of white trim hanging out again from Kraft Supply for You. I did flowers in all the corners, and then added just some flat back little gem pieces from my stash. And then the double pocket. And then again, I just left the inside plain. I might go back in and add pockets there. I'm just not sure. It's so bulky as it is that I don't want, if I were to gift it to anybody and put things in the pockets, I don't know that it would be able to handle too much more in there. And so there is my final project. I really love how this turned out, and I especially love how the little bling piece made my butterfly stand out a little bit more, and it made the perfect little body for my butterfly. So hopefully you guys liked my project. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below in the description box. And of course, all the links for Kraft Supplies for You will be listed below. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day and happy crafting.